This is where the nitty-gritty starts and things change.
I think a lot of people are already screaming, by the way. Just to
You
let
think
you
so?
know. I think so. People are definitely saying, where the hell is somebody that
Oh,
should
okay. I
be
think
here?
I know who you're talking
But
about.
anyways, continue. Day 2 of the NFL draft is officially in the books, and we have some new landing spots for some new running backs and wide receivers for some places that we are excited
Chaos.
about.
Again, back-to-back days of chaos.
100%. And so much has changed. So let's not waste any more time. And let's get straight into it. Go for it, Zach. First one.
Yeah, you know, yesterday we released a video and we talked about our rankings. Not a lot has changed in the first couple tiers. So we won't go too in-depth on those first couple tiers. We'll talk mostly about day 2 stuff. And then tomorrow we'll kind of have like our final all position rankings. The 101 is still the same for me. As I said yesterday, Caleb Williams in a super flex format. He is the unquestioned 101 for me.
No question.
I personally don't mind what needs I have. I don't care if I need a wide receiver. I'm going to try and trade back to the 102. And if I can't, I'm going to stick. I'm going to pick. And I'm going to trade for needs if I have a need somewhere in my team. Again, super flex league. We've talked about this to nauseum.
Take us through your 102 to the 104.
Also has not changed. This is pretty solid tight for me, honestly. Marvin, Jaden Daniels, and Malik Neighbors. Yeah. I am not saying, like I mentioned yesterday, that the players in the next tier aren't worthy or aren't as talented as the guys in the top 4. But the reason I have these tiers is to signify what buckets of players I would be willing to draft in certain areas. And at the end of the day, I'm not drafting either of the guys at the 105 or the 106 over any of these 3 names from the 102 to the 104. Neighbors, Marvin, both go top 5, top 6 in the NFL draft. Both go to places where they are instantly alpha wide receivers. And Jaden Daniels, with his rushing upside, I keep saying this, but I would not be surprised. He is my sneaky, wild card, low-key guy that could be the most valuable player this time next year from this class for Superflex leagues.
Yeah, all these 3 guys go to exciting landing spots with a tremendous upside here. Nothing on my end has changed with these 4 players so far. So take us to your next tier then.
All right, this caused a lot of controversy on yesterday's video. We have, I think both, I don't know if you made this move with me, but I put J.J. McCarthy ahead of Drake May, but I had them in the same exact tier. Did you make that change, or are you still Drake May? Because I don't think there's a wrong move. There's a conversation to have, but
there's definitely a conversation to have. I have not moved Drake May or JJ McCarthy ahead of Drake May. Now, I've said this in the previous video. JJ McCarthy arguably goes to one of the best landing spots. I mean, we're talking about Caleb Williams and his weapons. JJ McCarthy has, some would say, even better weapons for someone like JJ McCarthy for a rookie quarterback here. So I haven't made the move, but I like the move that the Patriots made for Drake May. Now, it probably wasn't the guy that we all expected, which we'll get into in the second half of this video. But right now, I'm going to stay put with Drake May. But I will say my rankings are fluid with both of these guys here because things can change at any given day. Take us through your next tier, 107, 108.
Yeah, the 107 to the 108. Roma Dunze's locked and loaded at that 107, I think, in most leagues. I could be wrong. I don't think Roma Dunze, I mean, we heard this on our live stream today, but I see a lot of people saying, well, I got this guy ahead of a Dunze, this guy ahead of a Dunze. I think a Dunze should be the locked and loaded, unquestioned number 3 in this class.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sorry, one thing that people disagree with you and I on is Bo Nix. We have Bo Nix as a top 8 player in this class. Do you also? Has that changed for you? Do you still feel the same way? Bo Nix top 8 like me?
No, Bo Nix is definitely top 8. A quarterback that got top 12 capital to a situation that I think we both believe in Sean Payton. We've seen the history there. Joe Lombardi's here as well, who we've seen the history in the past there with Drew Brees. I know he went with, if I'm not mistaken, the Los Angeles Chargers as well with Justin Herbert, and like that wasn't a long-lasting, stint for him. But he comes back and goes back with Sean Payton, which is exciting. And Bo Nix has a perfect opportunity to be something. And look, on paper, it's not terrible, but it's something. Like it's not the best, but it's something. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Javonte Williams. He may not have Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison, but he has people around him still, and there's still time in the NFL draft to get some talented players that it may not be good for fantasy, but at least he can grow with coming into it. So I think Bo Nix getting that top 12 capital in the first round is pretty significant here.
And, honestly, for me, the big key factors as to why I'm in on Bo Nix, number one, you and I liked him as a prospect. Some people don't, and they just won't agree with us on that, and that's totally fine. I get it. Number two, Sean Payton. I kept falling in love pre-draft with the idea of Sean Payton and Bo Nix linking up together. I truly believe Bo Nix is the best pre-snap quarterback in this class. I think he has the highest IQ. Oregon will let him run the offense on his own for a long, stints of time. And that just shows his maturity. It shows his high IQ. Something else to talk about here that we haven't talked about is the Broncos have 3 picks in the next 2 rounds, rounds 4 and 5. And there are a lot of players still available that you and I really like. They could add a couple impact names. I'm sure with one of those picks, they'll add a wide receiver. One of those names that hasn't come off the board yet that we should talk about, Troy Franklin.
Absolutely.
If this team adds Troy Franklin, that's super interesting. I know we love Malik Washington, Javon Baker still on the board, Tez Walker, Brendan Rice. There are still some impact wide receivers available for them to add to this team. So I think ultimately the draft capital is really enticing. The connection with Sean Payton is enticing. And you can see some of the reasons why he loves him in his offense.
Yeah, completely agree here. Rome Odunze at the 107 going to the Chicago Bears. Now, don't expect this to be a big breakout like we mentioned in the last video, but this is a long play here because once Keenan Allen is gone, Rome Odunze steps up here, or he could just instantly be the wide receiver too, and we're just completely wrong. But what we do know is that he's going to be growing here with Caleb Williams for the next 4 years, potentially 5, which is or for the rest of his career, which is extremely exciting.
All right, 109 to 111. This is where things change, okay? Things have gotten a little more solidified for me. Keep in mind, these are not tight end premium rankings.
Okay.
So we won't see a certain name just yet. But at the 109 to the 111, if I'm in a super flex 12-man, no tight end premium league, it is just these 3 wide receivers I'm considering. Brian Thomas Jr.,
sure,
Xavier Worthy, and Ladd McConkey. Those are the only names for me I will be drafting around those ranges. Now, of course, if one of those guys at the 107 to 108 fall, that will change things, right? But Ladd McConkey, yes, he didn't get first round draft capital, and actually round 2 hit rates are really, really poor for fantasy football in the NFL draft. However, it's very close to first round draft capital.
Yeah.
He was a 34th overall pick, so just 2 picks out of round 1.
And they trade up for him.
They trade up, and we have to include some context here to each class. Each class is so unique, it's so individual, and we have talked ad nauseum about how really impressive and star-studded and deep this wide receiver class is. So you will get first-round talents in round 2. A guy like Ladd McConkey, I think, is well deserving of being in this conversation. However, I would still lean Xavier Worthy and Brian, considering they have that round 1 capital. And, for Brian in particular, I'll hand over to you, but I think some of us might be overthinking Brian Thomas Jr., to be honest with you. Everyone loved him pre-draft. It was everyone's locked and loaded wide receiver 4 for the most part, okay? For the most part, it was consensus. He goes out and crushes the combine. People like his film. And then he goes to an area of huge need with a quarterback that I like, Trevor Lawrence, in the first round. They lost Calvin Ridley. They need a guy like Brian there. It just feels like Brian Thomas should be getting a little more respect, is all I'll say.
Look, it definitely makes sense. Brian Thomas Jr. getting drafted to the Jags, 23rd overall pick. Look, the reason why I'm bringing this up, and I want to know in the fantasy community, because I think it depends on the quarterback play. I think it depends on the situation that these teams land on. Because if you really think about it, all these guys here land in phenomenal quarterback play. But what is the situation around him? Who's around him? And I think there's an argument for Ladd McConkey to be ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. At the moment, I do have Ladd McConkey over Xavier Worthy. But as I'm sitting here today, right now, I am still contemplating whether if I should put Ladd McConkey over Brian Thomas Jr. because of the situation. We think of Brian Thomas Jr., who has Travis Etienne, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk. Yes, he gets the first round draft capital, but the situation and players around him. Ladd McConkey, on the other hand, people don't like Quentin Johnson. I'm a Quentin Johnson believer. But he goes
get
to the number. He goes to a phenomenal spot with a quarterback in Justin Herbert, who has produced multiple years of fantasy relevant wide receivers. I just think there's an argument to be had there. So I'm not saying I have him there right now. I wouldn't be surprised if people do put Lamb McConkey over Brian Thomas Jr. By next week, essentially, and really solidify that in their rankings here.
Yeah, I can see it happening too. But I think I'll stay true to this. Like we mentioned earlier, though, these rankings are fluid. We can change them before rookie draft season actually begins. But yeah.
I get it.
Just before we get into the next tier, we want to let you guys know that by the time this is released, we will be 1 day out from releasing our final version of our 2024 rookie report. Brand new rankings with tiers for one quarterback, super flex, and even positional rankings.
That's right.
We'll talk about where the tier breaks are in that report. We will also give you historical hit rates in that report as well. You'll often hear us on our channel saying, well, this round, the hit rate's bad for this position. Well, if you want to see that all in a document and kind of explained, it is in our rookie report. Also, we do Dynasty team reviews. So if you want your Dynasty team reviewed, you can get all this when you become a Mother Flocker member with the promo code LAND. We are working on the team review part of our website, but you can see where your team is versus the rest of your community. You can sync your leagues, and eventually you'll be able to submit that. But even here right now, we are doing Dynasty team reviews live next week. So if you want your team review to be reviewed and you want everything you see here on your screen, support the show by becoming a Mother Flocker member with the code LAND. Let's get into the next tier. This is where the nitty gritty starts and things change.
I think a lot of people are already screaming, by the way. Just to let you know. I think so. People are definitely saying, where the hell is somebody that should be
I think
here?
I know who you're talking about.
But anyways, continue.
Well, all right. I'll just put it out on the table and let's talk it through. Tell me what you think we should talk about. Yeah. Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Michael Penix Jr., Brock Bowers, and Ricky Pearsall. I'd encourage people to look at the name of this tier. I am not claiming I know exactly how to rank these players right now. I'm claiming they are in the same tier bucket for me. 112 to the 204. That is where I would have these players ranked in this tier. But what do you think is the most important conversations to have here?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's Brock Bowers. A lot of people have been, whether it's tight end premium or not, and I've said this in our live stream multiple times, if I have a 0.5 tight end premium, I am not sure if I'm taking Brock Bowers in the first round. If I have a full point premium, I think there's a different conversation. I think if it's a 2-point premium, it's a different conversation. But let's be honest. Look yourself in the mirror. Think about it. I understand Brock Bowers is probably one of the best generational talented wide tight ends coming out of Georgia in a long time. He didn't test whatsoever. He didn't go to a favorable landing spot whatsoever either, compared to all of these other wide receivers who may have fell to the second round, who may have fell into the late first, but their landing spots are favorable. The fact that Brock Bowers here is in the conversation of being the 112 to the 204, I think a lot of people aren't going to like that. So how can, basically my question is, are you ever going to be taking Brock Bowers over the wide receivers in your tier 109 to 111? Because at the moment for me, I don't think I am. Unless it's a full-on tight end premium.
Yeah, it would need to be a full point premium. And
I don't think anyone can justify it outside of talent alone that Brock Bowers is deserving to go in the 109 to the 111. Now put everything together. You get what I'm saying? I'm saying that to the community, not you. Put everything together now. Is he still worthy of going in that first round? I'm not sure.
I think he's worthy of it, but you have to ask conversation. So you have to ask questions. If a team is like, am I a team that should take Bowers in the back half of round one? Well, my first question would be, is how big is your league? Is it a 10-man? Mm-hmm. Because tight ends who make an impact are going to hold a lot more value in that sort of format. Is it a 8-man with a premium? Then 100% Bowers is worthy of being in that position. You know, you could even make the case where I'm in a 16-man league and it's really tough to find an impact tight end, but there's no premium. Okay, well, that's a conversation that we might be able to have. But a lot of people will have an Njoku, an Ingram, They'll have a Kincaid, an Andrews, a Ferguson even, and it just
that is
the issue is
Mm-hmm.
that the precedent that Laporta set last year is unrealistic. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Brock Bowers can't break the records that Laporta just set, but history is overwhelmingly not in favor of rookie tight ends producing. It's just not in favor of that happening at all. Now, I could see myself changing Brock Bowers' rankings once I fully understand how they're going to deploy him, because I have heard as of recent that they want to deploy him as a hybrid wide receiver tight end.
Yep.
It's always a fun idea. No one really ever who says that does it well. It's always confusing. Remember, I mean, the Falcons weren't all that far off from saying that as well. And then they taught Kyle Pitts how to block in line for the longest time, and it was frustrating.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I think it comes down to every single league. I'm not going to say he's unworthy. Clearly, as a talent, he is. But it really comes down to your league, and that's going to come down to each individual person.
Yeah, and I get it. And, you know, I think it also depends on the tight end that you have. And I'm not saying that if I have
I disagree, because then we're coming to the point where we're drafting for need.
Sure, and I get that, but I think a lot of people in the community do that, right? I'm not saying we do, but I'm not saying that you should be doing it, but a lot of people would say like, well, I need a tight end. Should I just get Brock Bowers? And I'm like, well, I don't think you should be doing that. But I think a lot of people would say, well, if I have a David Njoku, I don't love his quarterback, maybe I should just get Brock Bowers to just reset it. I don't think that is the right move.
I hear you.
Especially with that first round draft capital and situation here. The running backs here, Trey Benson going to the Arizona Cardinals, a phenomenal landing spot here with Kyler Murray. A lot of people first reaction is like, I don't like the landing spot from what I've been hearing because of Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. But we've seen how James Conner...
Because of James Conner, I think.
Yeah, well, because of James Conner, but James Conner, not necessarily worried about James Conner. I think they're worried about, like, where is Trey Benson going to get the opportunity? Because Kyler Murray is a mobile quarterback. He likes to take opportunities away from James Conner, but that's what I was trying to get to. We shouldn't be worried about that because of how James Conner has produced, right?
Sure.
With Kyler Murray. So I like his landing spot.
I love his landing spot in Arizona. He was my RB1 pre-draft. I understand that some people want to put Brooks ahead of him, but I don't think they should be in a separate tier. I think they should be right beside each other. The hit rate for a round 2 running back is 65%. That's a top 24 points per game season in their first 4 years. Jonathan Brooks, round 2. For round 3 is also very good. Round 3 is a 54.5% hit rate for Trey Benson. Trey Benson goes early round 3. So again, it's almost like the Ladd McConkey conversation with round 1, round 2 is almost round 2 for Trey, right? Early round 3, they obviously grab him here for the future of their team. But the hit rate is still absolutely fantastic. In fact, round 3 running back, Badaki, has a higher hit rate than a round 1 wide receiver in their first 4 years, than a round 2 wide receiver in their first 4 years.
Yeah.
So still, I think it's a very good bet on Benson and Brooks, and I think they're in fantastic spots. Brooks is not... Chuba Hubbard shouldn't concern you. James Conner hasn't been healthy for a full season, I think, ever. Maybe I'm wrong. Don't quote me. That's hyperbole. And also, he has 1 year left on his deal. So this is the perfect opportunity for this team to see what they have in Benson second half of the season as they look towards their future. So love those two guys. Super happy with where they landed. And then Slick Ricky could move up boards drastically if they actually trade Ayuk or Debo. If they keep those two guys this year,
I think he'll be a phenomenal value in the middle of the second round.
I agree, but I can't take him higher than this.
I agree. It's a longer play. If you are a Slick Ricky believer and you also believe that the 49ers are going to be trading away the San Francisco, or trading away Brandon Ayuk or Debo Samuel, and your league mate doesn't, and Slick is falling to the middle of the second, take him. Because once he is traded, Ayuk or Debo's traded, Slick Ricky value is going to rise. Why? Because he's a first round wide receiver. And to get a first round talent at the moment in the middle of the second is phenomenal here. So I completely agree. I like Slick Ricky. And the last one on this tier, you had in our last video, Michael Penix Jr. as if I'm not mistaken, a first round pick. Now He's from the 112 to the 204.
Yep.
Now, let's do a Twitter version. We disagree. Talk to me about it and kind of break it down and give everyone what you're thinking about Michael Penix now.
As simple as I can say it, if he is available at the 202 or the 203 or the 204, I will probably draft him in every single league. And I totally understand people's concerns. However, I guess simple Twitter version, there is now precedent for this situation. It is not a perfect example. There is no perfect example. This isn't common, right? But there is now precedent for this happening. A team having a quarterback that they consider franchise quarterback and then drafting a guy in round 1. Last team that did that, obviously, the Packers. Yes, I know. Jordan Love was younger. Yes, I know. Aaron Rodgers was an MVP. All these different conversations people are talking about. But still, that is the precedent. And ultimately, at some point, that player has become the starter for that team. Okay? We can even go back to when Alex Smith, this conversation about how, well, what if Kirk leads them to the playoffs? Doesn't matter. Writing's on the wall. Okay, well, what if he leads them to the playoffs? Well, Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs after they drafted Jordan Love. They signed Aaron Rodgers to a 2-year, $50 million per year extension, and the writing was still on the wall for Jordan Love. He still was the starter. He still got his opportunity because of that draft capital, because of the belief of the team. Go back to when the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes. Well, wait a second. Alex Smith took them to the playoffs. Doesn't matter. They saw what Mahomes could do for them in practice. They bet on him a year before. And ultimately, I just think at the end of the day, Michael Penix Jr., they had him as their quarterback 2 in the class. They viewed him as an elite prospect. And I'm happy to wait 2 years to see a guy that they view in that light play ball with Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Darnell Mooney, and also an incredible offensive line. I don't think you will ever in your lives again have an opportunity to draft a quarterback who went top 10 in the NFL draft in a super flex draft in the second round anywhere. I just don't think you will ever have that opportunity again. And last thing I'll say is injuries happen all the time. I would encourage anyone, go and look at the starting quarterbacks for any NFL team last year and see if that quarterback finishes a starter. About 50% of teams did not have their starting quarterback from the start of the year to the end of the year because injuries kept happening everywhere. And by the way, Kirk Cousins is a 36-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles tear. We don't even know if he's going to be the same dude. I get it. The money is there. But ultimately, if this team believes in Penix and at some point they think this guy gives us a better chance to win, they will not hesitate to play him regardless of the money. These coaches, this staff, every single week, every single win or loss, they are fighting for their lives. If at some point they think Penix is a better starter for them within the first 2 years, they will not hesitate to play him regardless of what the money says. Otherwise, if they weren't planning on, at least considering that, they wouldn't have drafted him top 10. So that is my final say. And the reason I said there's precedent now is because the common reply is, well, don't draft him. Just wait until next year and pay a third for him or pay, late second for him like Jordan Love. The reason Jordan Love was affordable because there was no precedent in the Superflex Dynasty era. There was no precedent for that working out. Okay, that's why people wobbled on Jordan Love. I get it's a different quarterback. But now that there is precedent, I promise you guys, if there's anyone out there like me in your league who wants to draft Penix early second round, you will not be able to get Penix from any of those guys for a second round pick next year. It will not happen. We will be willing to wait it out because ultimately we have seen the precedent and this guy was drafted top 10. We're not going to sell him to you for a second round pick this time next year in a weaker class. So that's my case. I rest my case.
Sure. And I'm in the belief, I guess just to give my version of people that don't believe Michael Penix, I think this is what I'll say. Michael Penix is deserving to go from the 112 to the 204, however way you want to put it. I'm also okay not taking Michael Penix and taking a chance on some of these other wide receivers or running backs, however that looks like, because I do believe his value will fall. Now, it may not be significant, and yes, there's maybe more there's precedence with Jordan Love, but for me, in my opinion, I think that his value is going to fall because what happens in Dynasty, people want to win now. People want the return now. And if Kirk Cousins plays for 2 years, yeah, he goes to the playoffs, and we said the same thing with Jordan Love. Jordan Love, oh, well, he's going to be for Aaron Rodgers, hopefully starting in a couple years. What happened? His value fell. There was a precedent there, but yes, I get what you're saying. He is worthy of going here. Just depends on how you value and if you are willing to take the risk on him of his value falling and later on or not falling at all, and then saying, dang, well, I should have taken him at the 112 or the 204. So
even still in that, Jordan Love still became the starter though.
Yeah.
Even still. He still became the starter, still had an opportunity to
sure.
play.
100%. So
I hear people. But yeah, I just don't think you're going to pry Michael Penix out of someone's hands for a second round pick next year. And I believe that the Superflex community learns from their mistakes, and I think they'll learn from the Jordan Love mistakes that they made.
All right, going into the last tier, mid to late seconds. Take us through.
Yeah. I really am struggling to nail down how to rank these players.
I agree.
Maybe by tomorrow I'll have a more solidified tier system for you guys. But I think anywhere from the 205 to like the 302, this is kind of what you're looking at. Xavier Legette, I still have my question marks on his ability to separate in the NFL, but I do think he's the first guy up here. This is where things get spicy. Blake Corum, I have here. Then I have Jalen Polk. Blake Corum, by the way, went to the Rams just today. Jalen Polk goes to the Patriots, links up with Drake May. Jermaine Burton, J. Cole, my guy, links up with Joe Burrow, the perfect Tyler Boyd replacement in Cincinnati. Keon Coleman, that's the guy the Bills decided. That's our dude. I'm sure we'll talk about it. Adonai Mitchell falls down the board to the Colts. Corley goes to the Jets. Roman Wilson to the Steelers. Jalen McMillan to the Bucks, which I originally hated, but that changed. And then Marshawn Lloyd to the Packers, which I think is actually my least favorite landing spot of any player on day 2.
Yeah, completely get it with Jalen and Marshawn Lloyd. Let's talk about Keon Coleman. Mm-hmm. The Buffalo Bills trade back into the second round, and they had Ladd McConkey available. They had Adonai Mitchell available, which clearly of the NFL, we just were wrong about Adonai Mitchell clearly because he fell all the way to the third. Keon,
it was late second, right? Or did he go third?
I feel like it was third. Maybe it was late second.
It was late second.
Late second?
Mid second, yeah.
Keon Coleman is the guy off the board here. I don't see that. I'm not a. If you guys have been following this channel, I'm not a Keon Coleman believer. Sure. I know the instant reaction is that Keon Coleman is taking 140 targets because Stephon Diggs is no longer there. Keon Coleman is nowhere near the wide receiver, the route runner, the separator that Stephon Diggs was for the Buffalo Bills. I actually think he replaces more of the Gabe Davis role, that deep threat, big body type of wide receiver. Now, I think he's a little bit better wide receiver than Gabe Davis, for sure. I'll give him credit for that. But I think this just proves to my point what I've been saying earlier in off seasons, that Dalton Kincaid is the guy for this offense. And Keon Coleman, he is just a piece of the puzzle to where they're going to be spreading the ball out more. There's not going to be a solidified wide receiver 1 here. I think that wide receiver 1 or that target 1 is Dalton Kincaid, like the Travis Kelce, like the Mark Andrews. That's the type of outlook I'm seeing here for the Buffalo Bills. So this Keon Coleman pick is not exciting for me for the Buffalo Bills. And look, he gets decent draft capital, but still, I'm not sure if I'm taking. I like Roman Wilson's spot, to be honest with you, better than Keon Coleman.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? It's tough. I like Jalen Polk old landing spot way more than I like Keon Coleman, but I know people like Coleman as a talent, and he's linked with a better quarterback. I get it. I can't do it. I can't do it.
So obviously, a lot of people know my thoughts on Keon from this channel, but in summation, the last 4, 5, 6 months we've been talking about it, my stance has been, no, he's not a good separator. No, he's not a very good route runner. He's a great athlete, but he just does not move like you want those really good route runners and separators to move. But Keon is not an easy evaluation. You know, this dude's strengths are something that could be complemented by the right quarterback. And I constantly said my favorite comp for him was Kenny Golladay. I said, look, Kenny Golladay had Matt Stafford. He had a gunslinger throwing him the ball. If Keon gets that, I could be more interested. And I feel like this is kind of what Keon Coleman has gotten here in Buffalo. I'm not going to sit here and push him into the first round. I think that's silly, but I think he's well worthy of being considered in the mid to late second round. Again, you know, obviously they lose Diggs. I don't know that Keon's going to break out year 1 or anything, but it intrigues me that he gets one of these gunslingers to throw him the ball. And I think that could be a way that he wins in the NFL. But yeah, I agree. I prefer Polk over him. I think that's a more enticing landing spot. I am very interested to see what sort of chemistry he builds with Drake May. I prefer Burton over him. And by the way, if you're someone who's sitting there like, how the hell can you have Burton over Coleman? Burton went in round 3. It really doesn't matter historically. Round 2 wide receivers have a 28% hit rate.
Yep.
Round 3 is 22%. So you're talking about a 6% difference over the span of a decade. It really doesn't matter all that much, historically, at least. Okay, so I'll take Burton over Keon. I think there's a more enticing pathway for him when you think about post-T. Higgins era, when you think about, obviously, the team losing Tyler Boyd now. So I think he's a little bit more enticing. And by the way, on Blake Corum, he goes to the Rams. Really strange, but you and I were big advocates of maybe extracting as much value out of Kyren Williams as you could before the draft.
Yes.
We were concerned.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It turns out to be true. We missed on some stuff, but it turns out to be true. And ultimately, I can't in good conscience sit here and tell you that Kyren Williams isn't impacted. It's just, I just don't believe that's true. Sean McVay is all about getting those late round values. For him to spend day 2 capital on a running back when he already had a running back that put up ridiculous type of numbers, that to me signifies that he sees a lot in this running back in Blake
100%.
Corum, and it tells me that that's going to be an important part of his offense. Otherwise, why waste the draft capital when you already felt good about just Kyren Williams? So to a lesser extent, it feels like, actually to a bigger extent, it feels like the Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet situation last year, where it's like, okay, not ideal for Zach Charbonnet, but I could see him work into the rotation. I could see him becoming an important part of that offense. But ultimately, I think you have to take Blake Corum somewhere around mid second round because of the draft capital. That round 3 hit rate is 55%. It's really good. So I can't just push him all the way down my board. But then it's funny because Marshawn Lloyd is even further down. But I'm more concerned about his situation than I am with Blake Corum's, because the Packers just signed Jacobs to a big deal. But also, there's an out after this year. That's a tough
weird.
one to digest.
It's weird, no question about it. And, I'll give my 2 cents on the guys that you kind of mentioned with Blake Corum. I start with Blake here. I agree. I think there's going to be an outlook there or a weird perspective when it comes down to Kyren Williams and Blake Corum. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth. But this is the first time we saw another running back going to the Rams since Cam Akers, if I'm not mistaken, with Sean McVay taking him, and he had high expectations.
Day 2,
high expectations for Cam Akers. It just didn't work out with that injury and then that Achilles tear, unfortunately. Going to Jermaine Burton, I know a lot of people saying, well, Jermaine Burton about Keon Coleman, like you kind of mentioned there. Well, what about the rumors about Tyler Boyd T. Higgins being traded or requesting a trade? Does that actually happen? It may not happen now. Maybe it happens post June 1st, or maybe in the offseason, or maybe in season. When T. Higgins hypothetically is no longer on this team, you wish you'd taken Jermaine Burton in the middle of the second. And if not, he plays a Tyler Boyd role regardless, which is phenomenal. Another thing I was thinking of there with Keon Coleman, because I kind of was talking about the Gabe Davis situation. Gabe Davis, 6'2", 216 pounds, ran a 4.54 at the NFL Combine. Keon Coleman, 6'3", 213. He ran a 4.61. So Keon Coleman doesn't have the speed that Gabe Davis has, which makes this even more difficult to envision, to be, in my personal opinion, to envision. Now, he is the better athlete. 100% think he's bigger, stronger, physical.
I think he has the same game speed, though. I don't think he's slower in game.
Maybe. I guess like if we're just comparing his stats side to side, it looks like Keon Coleman is the slower prospect. But like if you're thinking about Keon Coleman taking over that Gabe Davis big deep ball threat, maybe he doesn't have that long speed that we expected Keon Coleman to have. But yes, that in-game speed is completely different when it comes down to it, because I mean we saw Kyren Williams fall down draft boards after his 40 time, and he was looking like a freaking road runner on the field last year with the Rams. So anything can happen. Just kind of hitting that nail on the head there. One guy we didn't mention, and maybe we can close it out with this. 2 guys. Let's talk about it. Adonai Mitchell falling to the Indianapolis Colts. I think this is, respectfully, and no, nothing on Adonai Mitchell, I think this is a dead asset. I mean, you have Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, Josh Downs. Now you add Adonai Mitchell. Where does he get that opportunity? Where does that come from? And can Anthony Richardson even support Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, and Adonai Mitchell. Throw Josh Downs in there. Where does that come from? I do not understand it. I do not see it. I love that Adonai Mitchell as a talent. Wasn't expecting him to go to the Colts. And then Roman Wilson, love the landing spot here. If I'm not mistaken, he goes to the Steelers in the middle of the 3rd round, which is phenomenal. He plays that wide receiver 2 role next to George Pickens. So I think there's opportunity for Roman Wilson there as well. Just need to see how that pans out. I still need to wrap my head around Roman Wilson and where those opportunities are going to come. Does he play the Deontay Johnson role? Does he play the slot role? Don't really know as of yet, but the pathway to opportunity is exciting for Roman Wilson.
Yeah, I think Adonai Mitchell calling him a dead asset is probably
harsh. I get it.
Pretty harsh. I wouldn't call him a dead asset by any means, but I do agree that the landing spot is tough. It's tough to paint a picture in which Anthony Richardson can support both Pittman and Adonai and Downs if Downs is going to continue to produce. So just ultimately, it's a tough picture to paint as far as pathway to consistent targets or breakout. But I also love Roman. Just quickly on Malachi Corley, love the spot. I think he fits Garrett Wilson, or complements Garrett Wilson rather, really, really well. And then Jalen McMillan, my guy, my favorite player in the entire draft.
Yeah.
It felt like he was the only one who got a bad landing spot, which was frustrating, honestly. It was really frustrating to see. It felt like everyone else was like, yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome. This is great.
Yeah.
And then it felt like Jalen got buried. What I will say is I have a little bit more hope because it looks like Chris Godwin's contract is up next year. He will be a free agent. So maybe this is them prepping for the next year. And does that mean that Jalen gets more opportunity towards the end of the season? I'm not sure. But I will still draft him in the 3rd round very often this year. But
sure,
for the sake of time, that's all we got for today. We appreciate you guys. Hit that like button. I don't know if round 4, 5, 6 has started yet, but we appreciate you for watching. I'm sure we'll have another update tomorrow. Hit the like button and we'll see you soon. All up. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh,
it's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.